I don't know why that decided to stop recording, but the guy that I was buying this stuff from just like lost track of me, and I tried to get in contact with him again and he disappeared. So that's gone. So what was left with was to go to ISP West, who I absolutely love. But the only thing that they had to do this was this $220 stainless aluminum, or it's not stainless aluminum, but this aluminum billet, beautifully machined cable guides. I didn't want to spend that much fucking money, but I really didn't have a choice in the matter, because also, friggin' sunroofs, they're rare, and also these cable guides are different every fucking year. Like from 70 to 73 to like 67 to 69, and then from like 65 up. Like, they're all completely different. So I just kind of had to chalk it up and eat it. So there we go. Now I have nice shiny cable guides, and now I have to clean this up so that this is nice and shiny as well. Or at least like get all the muck off of it and see what happens. Then I got these guys, which are seals. The seal this is the felt seal to go around the edge of the sunroof. And then there's the seal, there's another seal back here that this guy that hits the back of the sunroof panel that allows it to seal up nicely. So I have everything I need to do this. So I'm going to start cleaning that guy up. And then the one thing that I need to figure out within the course of this video is how to get the rear of the sunroof to pick up. These little guys right here, these are what are they called? Pushers, basically. So what they do is when you wind the sunroof up, eventually when it gets to the end of the track, these guys pull up, which makes the sunroof panel it recesses down. So if it's flat here, it recesses down when you start cranking it back. It recesses down so it makes room so it fits underneath here. And then when you're cranking it back up, it needs to get to a certain point, and then the rear of it pitches up so that it seals and the sunroof is nice and flat with the roof. When I originally got the car, if you remember, if you go all the way back to the first video, the first thing that I tried to fix on this car was the sunroof, because it annoyed me that it was, you know, off pitch like that, and I couldn't figure it out. So I got to figure it out now. And then I decided in the course of that video that it's useless for me to spend time figuring out this little shit when I have so much paint and bodywork to take care of, and, you know, like re-welding in the pans and all that other stuff that I did. That has to be addressed first, because that's going to take the longest. I'll get to this later. And now it's the time, and it's kind of cool that it's been over a year, and the first thing I tried to fix is the sunroof, and now one of the last things that I try and fix is going to be that sunroof. So it's kind of cool to go full circle, kind of. So first things first, let's clean these guys up. Okay, so gave this guy a quick little scrub down with some simple green, and it's starting to make a little bit more sense. So you can see on these guys there's a curve on this end, and that's sort of, you know, that's the end that goes actually into the roof of the car. I don't know why the bend is there. I assume it's for like storage or something, like it helps store it. Whatever. Anywho, yeah, that goes in this side, and then this is the part that actually shows, that's actually visible. And it's funny because you can see there's an obvious demarcation right there, where it's like this is now painted, and then this is like the raw aluminum. And this old paint is definitely coming off. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and just take all this shit off. Just take a wire wheel to it and just get it all off. And just have the bare aluminum, and then I'll put some, like, what is it? I forget what this stuff is called, but I'll show it to you when I use it. But it's basically aircraft grade, like, rust preventer. And granted, it's aluminum, it's not going to rust, but it does tarnish, as you can see there, and there, and there, and there. So I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to take a wire wheel to it. Or maybe not a wire wheel. Maybe just some light sandpaper. And just take that off and make it all bare, because now everything is shiny. Right, so I think I got this figured out how this is all supposed to work together. I'll show the cable guides, how they're all set up a little bit later. But they don't do what I thought they did. These cables themselves have to be completely out in order to put them in here. But I'll show that later. But a few things I learned. First of all, this metal cable guide, which I think only the later models have metal. I think the earlier models have plastic cable guides. I don't know why this rubber cement stuff is on here. This is how it came to me from the previous owner. But they have to actually fit inside of this this rail here. Otherwise, it'll never fit this curve evenly. So you got to push it in there, which will garner further explanation when I talk about how I fit these guys in here. Okay, so that's that portion of it. Now, the actual cable guides that I got from ISP West. So they all do fit. I thought that they didn't, but they do. And the thing that kind of threw me was this guy right here, which replaces, on the old one, I still have my center mount on the old one, it replaces this guide here and this metal, I don't know, I can't take it off, but like there's the metal, I guess, guide as well, sub-guide, I don't know, and then there's the top cover. So it replaces both of those things. So what it does is it goes in actually before the side rails do, before these parts. It actually goes in before them. Because what it has to do is the cable has to sit on top of it. So this has to like go underneath. So this has to go underneath and mount in. And it gets pressed down into place, and these guys, the metal ends get smushed in there, and then it guides like that, like one on the top there, one at the bottom there, and that goes in. And then the side guides, these guys right here, these guys fit up flush to the ends right there. And I thought I had an issue, but apparently I don't, because I called up ISP and they told me that this metal part just sort of sits on top, and it's not supposed to be flush with the side pieces, because at the bottom here there's these little guys right here, and all these are like cable tensioners slash guides. So these push down on these two cables here and essentially keep them in place. So they're going to apply a little bit of tension to the cables and allow them not to jump and skip. So that's what this thing does, and it just kind of slides on top and overlaps the ends of these guys right there. So what do I need? Well, first of all, what I need to do is I have to actually, now that all the actual test fitting of the cables themselves and the guides, I'm all fairly confident that's figured out correctly. Now what I have to do is I have to actually take the sunroof and put it on these guides and see what's what, and basically do that, and then push the sunroof all the way back, and then reinstall all those guides and the winder that comes up through here, and basically wind it up and see what happens. And then at that point it's just fine-tuning the pusher and see if that works correctly. And I'm actually still a little unsure. Would you focus, please? There. I'm actually still a little unsure as far as how the flipper, this thing, basically works. I know that there's supposed to be some sort of push rod in here, but it doesn't exist. I asked ISP, or not ISP, the Samba, and they weren't too much help. They just said, like, yes, there is something that goes in here. To which I followed up, well, can I go to a hardware store and figure it out? And I haven't gotten a response, so I guess that one's up to me. That's fine. I will figure it out. But I got to go to the hardware store anyways to get these screws here, and the screws that go on the top of this. These little itty bitty guys right here. They're not big enough to actually catch anything. So I'm going to get, but the ones that do catch are actually the larger ones that go right in here. So I'm going to get a whole bunch of those. And test fit the sunroof. I got these pulled up pretty well. And you know, the cables aren't guided or lubed at this point, so they're really, really rough to move around, but you can still do it. I think I'm just going to move this guy. I guess I'll move these guys maybe to the middle. I think that's safe. Yeah, I'll figure that out. Maybe get these two whatever they are, flippers. Yeah. In the middle, attach the sunroof itself to it, push it all the way back so that then I have full access to put in all my screws and everything and get this all mounted up. Mount the winder, and then see what happens. And then once I'm happy with everything that's been done as far as like test fitting, and I know how it all, I've had it in and out a few times, I'm confident with it, then I'll go and I'll, like, you know, clean up all this polish and dust or dirt and shit and install the seals. Actually, no. After I'm confident that the sunroof works, then I have to install the headliner portion on the sunroof, and then I can lube all this shit up and put it all together for final assembly. So, a little bit of work still left to do. Some, you know, it's got to be in and out quite a few times to get it right. But I'll get there. I'll get there. So, sunroof is laying on top of the roof here. And here's the guides, or the whatever the fuck you want to call them. And I'm trying to figure out how this all works together. Now, when I got the car initially, this was not hooked through anything. It was just kind of like held in place like by this little latch that sort of like goes out and in real easy. It's not really a big deal. But these guys definitely need to be further back because they go with this. And then there's this guy up here, has little hooks on it to just sort of like follow the guide rails. So what I need to look at for pictures is I need to figure out, does this need to come off, and does this little springy bit here, actually I think it'd be easier to show over here. Yeah, does this little springy bit come off, because there's a little circlip at the end here holding the spring in place, and this does move, you know, it is supposed to move. So I guess my question is, like, does this go in here, or does whatever goes in here go in there? Because this so now I have to basically move this behind this, because if this does go in here, then, you know, obviously I need to have this behind that. Let me look at the manual and see what it looks like, because I'm thinking that whatever pin went in here goes in there, and this just kind of gets held in here for some reason. I don't understand why it's pivoted like that, why it does that then, but I don't know. Let me look at some pictures. So based on this picture right here, looks like the, what do you call it, the springy bit goes out, and then that hole that they're showing right up there goes where the pin went. So I gotta find something to put that pin in there. I guess I'll go through my bag of bolts and see what fits in there, and then go to the hardware store and get some stuff that might fit. And hopefully that pin is not cammed or anything like camber bolts. So I don't know. So yeah, that's a little bit easier to figure out. Alright, so I called up TMI and I got a little bit more information regarding how to put the all the center stuff in here. Initially, I don't know if I did a video about it, but if I did, this will sound really stupid, but because I'll be repeating myself immediately afterwards. But it's been a while. Having a new job sort of takes time away from your hobbies. So, anywho, this thing doesn't fit flat on here like it should. I have to like push it down on the cables in order to get everything semi-lined up. I talked to TMI, and that's wrong. It should just literally just sit into place, and these guides here should really only like barely have contacted. Essentially all these guides do is just stop the cables from jumping up like that, like they are right now. Just keeps them down like such. So they said, and this was not in their description for this product whatsoever, so I had to call them up to confirm it, but you do have to use the metal guide from the old Sunroof. You do have to use this. And there's a few reasons for it. One, you can see it fits over this pretty nicely and holds everything in place very, very nicely. It like stops the cables from jumping around on the edges, and it's just a little bit more protection. But the thing is with this, it doesn't work with the this bottom part because of this little tab right here in the front. And because this is not a stock piece, this is a curved piece, I have to curve this little tab in order to get this thing to work. So this absolutely has to be on here, and I was running it without it prior. So hopefully this will make a little bit of a difference. Give me a little bit of a spacer so that I can like put the center guide on here, and it hopefully will work correctly this time. And yeah, so I'm just gonna take some pliers, bend that into shape, and get it to fit. Okay, I think I'm onto something. Two things about this don't make much sense to me. One, this gear is recessed way more than other reference photos that I've seen, so I need to figure out a way to bring it up. Two, I think my cables are crossed. I think this side, the left side, has to go under, and this has to go over. So basically, I think these are messed up. So I think I need to swap them somehow. I'm going to try it, see if it works, and maybe the first thing I'll try and do is get a little bit more raising out of this, but I kind of doubt that that's what it is. What am I missing? I'm missing something about this winder. There's got to be a way that I can lift it up a little bit more, because it's way recessed down there, and like it doesn't have too much purchase on this.
You know you got packages, right?
Yeah. Okay, I'm learning. So I swapped these out so that now the cable guides are, there's no crossover, right? So now it's just, if I can get this off, it's like that. No crossover. Up goes with up, down goes with down. No crossover. So what that's told me is this. Fit that in there. And I push down, get one of these guys started. What it'll do, oh, there goes my winder. So what it'll do, if you'll notice, is that one of these guys, one of these cables sinks down, and one stays up. And this one should sink down too. So if you'll notice, when I put this guy on there, this side is flush. It just sits on top like everyone says it's supposed to. And this one needs to be pushed down on the cable. So what that tells me is that there is a crossover. I'm on the right track. There is a crossover where this side, let's see, just make sure that one's, which one's right. Yeah. So this side being down like that is correct. That's how it's supposed to be. And it can go up here because there's no guide up here. So what it can do is that. On the opposite side, this one has to be down because the other guide sits right there. So the guides on the center plate are there and there. So this one needs to be down. So it's correct coming out of here. but then it needs to swap so it's up coming out of there. And vice versa for this one. And what that'll allow it to do is that there's a channel down there and a channel down there, and I'll be able to fit this guide in place as it's supposed to be. So let's do that. That takes care of it. That's what it was. Cables had to be swapped. And now it moves nice and smooth. Nice and smooth. Back and forth. Back and forth. No skipping, no nothing. Nice and smooth. And I guess this is the end of it. Yep, that's the end of it because it skips. And this one all the way back. All the way forward. Nice and smooth. Cool. It'll be much, much better when I actually grease these cables up. But for now, it works. And maybe tighten this thing down. So yeah. Easy enough. Swapping this. There's no problem with the kit. The issue is me, as usual. Okay, so for reference. Left side, up, down, up, down. That's how it works. So you basically need to have your low points there and there in order for this to work properly with the guides. So this really only applies if you're changing cables. This is really the only, like if you're just installing the sunroof, I doubt you'll have to do this if you kept everything together. But if you are installing new cables, that's the proper routing for this stuff. And on the flippers, this little pivot bit here has to face the front of the car. That little guy right there needs to face the front of the car, otherwise it won't work properly. And obviously flat side down. That's how it all works. So now it moves nicely when it's actually got pressure applied to it. I don't actually think I need to raise this gear up at all. I think it's just how this was made, because having it down there and having it all cinched into place, it all works. It would be nicer if I could raise this up a little bit, but I really don't see how I could because of that circlip right there. If I raise the sprocket up a little bit more, it just won't work. So that's that. Now I can start reassembling, and hopefully this is the end of it. Okay, so another interesting thing I was told by Alex at ISP is quite possibly the reason why my sunroof didn't work in the first place. If you're winding this, there is a point within the winding gear where it starts getting, what do you call it? Where it starts getting, yeah, there it is right there. It starts getting rough right there if you're turning clockwise. And that's the actual stop. Like, that's where it's supposed to stop. If you're going this way, it should be pretty much clean sailing for a while if you go counterclockwise. So why this is important. You need to allow yourself, when you get to this point here, when it's stiff, when you get to this point, you have to make absolutely sure that the sunroof lid is in the closed position. Because at this point, like if you want to be like super fancy about it, whoops, you can align it so when it hits this sticking point, the hood is fully closed. But I think the hack way to do that is just make it so you have more than enough room in here so that when the sunroof is closed, there's still some ability to wind more. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow these little ramps here, and there's corresponding ramps on the sunroof lid itself. These little ramps will allow it to sort of pop up in the back and lift up. And basically, you know, allow the flippers to work. Now, it'll never get here if you're constantly fighting it, if it's at the end of its rotation, at the crank handle, you will never ever be able to apply enough force to get it to move. It'll just essentially stop itself like that. So when you are aligning it, and I will do this better when I'm actually ready to start aligning things, is make it so that it is definitely all the way back here, and then start the rotation so what I think was happening, because I was sort of rambling here because I can't do two things at once. I'm actually doing three things at once. I'm narrating, winding, and filming, so props to me. So what I think was happening with my original sunroof, being that this wasn't... What are you doing? What are you doing? That's rude. What I think I was doing was that this thing was maxing out, so to speak. My wife just distracted the shit out of me. She'll do that. What I think was happening was, when I was winding this up, that it was hitting its stopping point before the sunroof could get kicked up. So hopefully this is the fix, just to align it properly with the center gear. And hopefully I'll be able to work it out. So I'm going to stop for today, because that was a big win, just figuring this whole thing out, because I knew it was something like that. It had to be. Because I have everything I need, it's just me, like, what am I doing wrong? And so what I'm going to do is tomorrow I will go and I will put these guides. Maybe I should lube them up first. Do I need to lube them up first? You know what I should do? Is I should act like this is fine, like, because I can put all this together and still remove the sunroof lid. And the only thing I'll have to remove to get this all aligned is the gear. That's the only thing that I actually, or the gear, well, not even the gear, just the cover, this thing. That's the only thing I have to remove to be able to adjust anything. So what I should do is I should treat this like final assembly and clean up those rails down there that go here, lube these cables up, and basically get this thing all cinched. Oh yeah, and clean up all that over there. And I should treat this like final assembly, because once these are greased, all the guides are in place. The only adjustment that really has to happen is up here at the crank handle and the sunroof lid going in and out, which the guides, these side guides, and the cables don't actually have anything to do with. So, okay, I think I'll do that. Get some grease for that, clean this up, and start putting it together instead of making myself put it all together and then take it all off again. I think I might as well just do it now that I know that it works and how the crank handle works and it's not skipping and everything fits together. So, good stopping point. Starting to cook here. Everything is assembled correctly and lubed. This needs to come off again just because there's lots of things that I need to adjust. I decided not to paint these just because I'm lazy, and frankly stuff's gonna slide on this, and fresh paint wouldn't do too well anyways. And it's protecting, it's fine, it's just sunroof. Who cares? If it bothers me, I'll just take it off again. The sunroof is in here. So one thing that I discovered with this was the metal guides that go underneath here. They're directional. One direction works one specific way. So what I was finding was that if I was pressing down on one of the guides in here, the end would be sticking up like that. Switch it to this side, lays flat. So those are right, like side specific. So get them right. I don't know why, but they are. But that's pretty much it. Like, the guide works now, as I discussed previously. So now it's just all about adjusting and being underneath. So let's go underneath. so the winder is kind of in place, and it winds pretty nicely. Actually, really nicely. It's very nice and smooth. And so now the issue is this, right there. This hasn't pushed up. Now, this should get to the point where it pushes up. This guy's starting to push up, but he's not. And I'll go outside the car and I'll show you that. But the one thing that is an adjustment point that I wasn't aware of was this guy right here, the front guides. These come off, and what they do... Oh, Jesus. Jesus. What they do is they lift up this top part right here so that it can clear things like this joint here and this little bit up here. And I guess eventually what it'll do is it'll align the front of this so that it's flush with this and it's not like sticking up over the body itself. So all the way up, it's starting to, you can sort of see what the flippers do. See, they start to move it. But they need to basically stand all the way up like that. But they just haven't gotten there yet. And that's going to take adjustment of the center guide. And this is apparently where all the fun happens. So here's what it looks like outside the car. And why the flippers are important. So, as you can see, this isn't flipped up. It's down like that. The flippers, when they're working correctly, will get it to do that. So it's nice and level. And they're just not there yet. So, I gotta keep plugging away at that. And this is the last step, and also one of the harder steps, apparently, is getting those adjusted correctly. So I gotta figure that out. And then, once that's figured out, it's time to put some sound deadener on this, and then the headliner material. And then I'm done. But for now, I gotta figure out how them flippers work. So the first thing I'm gonna try and do is bring the cables, the cable guides, the actual guides themselves. I'm going to take off the center point and I'm going to try and bring them up a little bit, or like forward a little bit. My theory with that is when I do that, it'll give it a little bit more time to, actually I don't know. Let me think about this. Let me think. Got two questions that need answering. If you can tell, the front of this is very much raised up. And the reason for that is once the rear actually starts working and it gets raised up level like that, that's going to be nice and level in the front. So that's the reason why, but it's just not there yet. So I have two questions. The first one, and I got to go in here to show you. Oh, the first question is this. What do I have to do to get these things to work? So just threading a bolt through there and tightening it up obviously isn't going to work. And the reason for that is that if it's too tight, then this doesn't pivot, right? So that doesn't really work. Now it would be nice if I could use a set screw on this position, but there is a set screw that exists, but it's just for, there's a spot for it right there, so I can control how much it's going back, but I feel like I need this thing to come more forward. So maybe it's just me taking this off and then just trying to like push this forward a little bit more, and then using a set screw to sort of set this in place all the way back so that it doesn't move but it's still allowed to like rotate. Maybe that's the only solution I can find, but my options are keep trying to jury rig something from Ace Hardware to make this work, or go buy new cables that have this at the end of it. But the thing is that they don't make those for the Type 3s. They make cables for like you know, like for Super Beetles and buses and all that stuff, but they don't make it for the Type 3. There's probably a way, like, I know that those cables are too long. The Type 3 cables are shorter. I know there's probably a way that I can get this to work, or I can figure out a way to shorten those cables up, because the new cables would have the pin that's necessary in here to make it all work correctly. So that's my options. Keep fiddling around with this, or go and get myself a new one and modify it. Second question is the headliner portion for this. Now, a little bit of digging on other Volkswagen models, and I figure out that there is a panel that is here that like clips in here and goes the length of the car. And I think that's what this one is. I was trying to watch my second video I made on this car when I removed the sunroof, but I didn't take good enough pictures to see, you know, if there is actually a panel here. Like, I see all this, like all these little witness marks here, all these little triangles, which makes me think that all it is just stretching a piece of fabric, like just gluing it here and stretching a piece of fabric back. But I know that's not right. I know that there's a panel, and it probably sits in this channel down here. This bottom channel of this guide probably sits in there. That moves back and forth. But I'll be damned if I know what it, because like the thing is like because of this, well, here's the thing, because of this, it actually goes further down than these things right here. So I'm kind of like stuck on this, on the headliner, like how it's all supposed to work. Like the one question is, okay, is there a panel that goes here? And if there is a panel that goes there, how do I make it? But if there isn't, then how do I stick the headliner in place where I can still adjust this stuff later on, which makes me think that there actually is a panel that I can just take off and slide back and then adjust all these things on the sunroof. So I'm basically where I started when I first bought the car, adjusting the sunroof, and still with no real good understanding of how it all works together. So kind of back to where I started. So I guess the smartest thing for me to do is leave this and just research stuff. Just leave it, get some answers, and then come back to it. Maybe I go do some other stuff on the car while I wait for this to be done. Because I got my bumper over there. I could pop that on and, you know, get my fog lights mounted to it. Or I could put the carpet down. A lot of things, but I'm like, I want to get this done. I want to get this done now. And just have it done and then move on and go do other stuff. But for right now, I think I'm still lost. Still don't think I have absolutely everything I need to make this work correctly. So it's enough rambling for now. I'm gonna go. It's St. Paddy's Day. Flyers are playing the Penguins, and I think I'm gonna go keep watching that.